Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1109 of the Juicebox Podcast. "46-year-old Lara has type 3C diabetes. She lost her pancreas, spleen, gallbladder, and part of her stomach during a pancreatic tumor surgery. Lara found the podcast while she was looking for help with her new diabetes. She found episode 279 and has been a listener ever since. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the continuous glucose monitor that my daughter wears, the Dexcom G7. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Get started today using this link, and you'll not only be doing something great for yourself, you'll be supporting the Juicebox Podcast. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
My name is Lara. I am Canadian. I live in Canada, in British Columbia, about an hour outside of Vancouver. I am 46 years old. I'm married and have one daughter who is 17, graduating high school this year. We couldn't be more excited about that.
Nice.
And I'm currently in a battle with pancreatic cancer.
Not as nice. Okay. Okay. So my first question is, before we started recording, because of the spelling of your name, I said, is it Lara? And you said yes, but then because of your Canadian accent, I thought you said Laura. So now I don't know what to do.
You know what? It's A-okay by me. It's pronounced Lara. I get Lara, Laura. It doesn't bother me whatsoever.
But I want to get it right.
It's Lara.
I'm leaning on the R too much, right?
Lara.
Yeah. So Lara, did I get it?
Yep. You got it.
See that? Well, I was going to curse right off the bat and say, shit, that sucks. But when did you learn about the cancer?
Well, it was March. I'm going to back up a little bit because it all started in March of 2021. I was 2 weeks out of moving. We had a major move underway to move to acreage in a much larger house. And 2 weeks before our giant move, I ended up in the hospital with pancreatitis, which was unusual for someone of my age. And I spent 7 days in the hospital being treated for pancreatitis. I'd had all of the CTs, the MRIs. Everything came out perfectly clear pancreas. They did find in July, when I had the secondary scan, an abnormality in a bile duct. And at that point, they told me that they were going to monitor it and I might need to have my gallbladder out.
Okay.
So
can I ask first? Let me step you through it. What are the symptoms that landed you in the hospital initially?
I had a terrible, terrible back pain. So it was radiating in the middle of the night from my mid-back through my shoulder blades, severe nausea, oily stool, abdominal pain, and just a general feeling of unwell. But actually, by the time I ended up in the hospital, my symptoms had recovered, but my blood work was still showing high lipase numbers and inflammation markers were up. So the only way to fix that is to put you on IV drip only and no food for 7 days.
Okay. Lipase is, that's just an indicator for the pancreas. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And by the
when
way,
those numbers are high.
oily stools, never something you want. I don't care for what reason.
No, but I was on a keto diet at the time too. So I kind of thought at the same time, maybe that was all related. Like it wasn't something, and initially I didn't have any pain. That started later. So I didn't really think much of it, to be honest with you. It kind of came and went.
Mm-hmm.
And in hindsight, really, the warning signs were there from long ago. And that's kind of what I want to bring attention to people, to be really in tune with their body.
If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes, because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. Yeah, now I'm doing a little reading right here. So lipase does not correlate to pain, in case you're wondering.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, and there is a concern here. Is lipase attached? Does it mean diabetes? For example. Mm-hmm. And it does say that lipase elevation shortly precedes the onset of type 1, but that's probably a thing nobody knows when it's happening, I would imagine.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's not something that they normally test for unless you're having issues. So until you're already at the point where you're having some symptoms and some issues, that's when they look for it. And it was actually by chance, my doctor thought, I shouldn't even check for this level, because he had also had a patient recently just before me with the same issues. Really? So, and that was her issue.
Yeah, I was wondering how they got to it so quickly, honestly. Mm-hmm. Plus, and I don't mean to be pejorative, but you're in Canada, so it's a province coin flip whether you get good health care or not, right?
Is that ever the truth? And I can tell you some nightmare stories that I've been through recently, actually, about that. But in this case, in the very beginning stages, I was treated very well. They were on top of it right away. I had the proper scans and everything. It seemed to be going along pretty well. Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. Yeah. So what was the initial treatment?
The initial treatment for me was hospitalization, clear fluids. After a few days, I was on only IV fluids because they put you on digestive rest. Mm-hmm. Is really the only way to get past that. And then by the time I left the hospital, I thought I was all good to go.
Yeah.
Weird. We'll check and see if maybe the gallbladder needs out later, but I felt totally fine.
Okay. Was the gallbladder showing any indication, or was that just a thing they said we have to watch out for?
Gallbladder and pancreatitis go together very often. Mm-hmm. And because they found that abnormality in the bile duct, they were watching that. And that might have been the trigger where they would have pulled the gallbladder out if that hadn't resolved itself. And
my last question is, when you said they scanned your pancreas, was that ultrasound?
It was CT scan.
CT. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead. You left. You thought you were good to go. I'm sorry. Keep going.
And then, so they said, come back in 6 months. And so that put it around February, my birthday of 2022. And I was feeling fine and well. They had scheduled me for the follow-up CT scan. And I was expecting at the very worst that I would have to have gallbladder surgery. No big deal. But I got a phone call after that initial scan in February of 2022, 2 days later, to come back in. And I knew at that point that I was in trouble. So at the second scan, they found a 1.4 millimeter mass on my pancreas. It was very, very small, very, very early. It had zero spread. There was no indication of any real seriousness at that point. They thought, no big deal. We can get in there really quick, get it out without having any spread. And I didn't have any symptoms. They thought this would be a curable thing for me.
For clarity, you said it once, but I want to make sure I repeat it. The pain was gone, right?
Pain was gone. I was totally fine. I was actually very annoyed that I had to go in for this scan because I had to take time out to do it. And it was a contrast dye one, which I didn't really like doing. And I thought to myself, well, I was fine. So why am I doing this? But I did my due diligence, and thank God I did, because it was a bad thing.
Before we move forward, and you tell me about, what they decided to do, you mentioned this, but I want to dig into it for a second. You said hindsights, like, I don't know if you used those words, but I thought, like, were there hindsight symptoms where even for years before, did you have issues that you ignored or stuff that you like look back and go, oh, I think this was a thing?
The only thing I would say that I should have paid more attention to was the symptoms from the pancreatitis, which was the oily stool. And I should have been on top of that. But with the keto diet, I thought maybe I'm just not digesting well, which clearly I wasn't, because there was issues there, and it was completely unrelated to the keto diet. But that also could have been something that triggered it as well.
How long before and for how long did that occur before you got the lower back pain shooting to your shoulders?
I would say several months.
Okay.
But not continually, off and on, not every day. So I didn't really think anything of it. And that was silly on my part.
No,
so
honestly, Lara, probably not. You know what I mean? Like, because for every person who can say, I ignored this and it turned into cancer, there's a million people, you know what I mean, who are like, oh, I ignored it. Guess what? Everything was fine. So, I mean, don't beat yourself up.
I guess that is the case. Yes.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up. But at the same time, it's great to know what to look for. Also, I think it helps highlight that your pancreas has something to do with your digestion, and a lot of people don't know that. So,
huge portion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so they see this little mass, and they're going to try to take it out. So what are next steps?
Yeah. So the next steps are PET scan and biopsy. I had the referral to a hepatobiliary oncologist surgeon who was confident that this was going to be a curable thing for me, given that it was so small. So PET scan showed just this very same, actually it showed the same tumor, very small. It also lit up my thyroid, which I had a thyroid nodule. They said that was going to be okay. They would do a fine needle biopsy on that, but it would be unrelated to what I was dealing with pancreatic cancer. The biopsy was done, and it confirmed that we were dealing with invasive ductal adenocarcinoma, which is the worst kind of pancreatic cancer to have.
Jesus.
It spreads quickly and it's quite aggressive, but we were still confident that with the surgery and then 6 months of chemo after the surgery was done, that I would have the cure that we were looking for. So I went in very, very positive and confident that I was in good hands and that things would be a-okay. And I do want to say that this was all extra scary for me because 10 years ago, we lost my uncle to pancreatic cancer at 57.
God. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Lara, I don't know if people know this. I haven't said this in a while, but when I sit down to record, generally speaking, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't pre-plan my conversations, and I don't really look at my calendar. So, you know how some people really want to know what the weather is before they go outside? I'm more of a wander outside and see what the weather's like person. And I do that with this too. And I just want to tell you up front, I don't want to slow you down, but if I pause, I lost my mom to cancer like in the last year, and I'm having a more difficult time with this than I thought I would, So
That's okay.
I don't want to stop you. We're definitely having this conversation, but at some point I'm going to cry today, just so you know. Like, let's just put that out there
And I
now.
likely will too. And
Okay.
that's A-okay.
Okay. Good. As long as we're both expecting it.
Yes.
Yeah. It took me by surprise a second ago. And I was like, I don't feel right. Why do I not feel right?
It gets ya.
Everyone's got all the hope in the world. Did you get a feeling like they really thought that, or that they were just being positive? The Dexcom G7 is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and it features a lightning fast 30-minute warm-up time. That's right. From the time you put on the Dexcom G7 till the time you're getting readings, 30 minutes. That's pretty great. It also has a 12-hour grace period, so you can swap your sensor when it's convenient for you. All of that on top of it being small, accurate, incredibly wearable, and light. These things, in my opinion, make the Dexcom G7 a no-brainer. The Dexcom G7 comes with way more than just this. Up to 10 people can follow you. You can use it with type 1, type 2, or gestational diabetes. It's covered by all sorts of insurances. And this might be the best part. It might be the best part. Alerts and alarms that are customizable so that you can be alerted at the levels that make sense to you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Dexcom and all the sponsors. When you use my links, you're supporting the production of the podcast and helping to keep it free and plentiful.
No, I really did, because by all stretches of the imagination, this was found by accident. It was found so early. It was very small, almost at the point where it wouldn't even be something that would be detected. It has to be a certain size before it can be detected on scans. Mm-hmm. The cells can be caught in PET scan just floating around because they light up like they feed them sugar, and the cancer cells light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But the actual tumors need to be big enough to be able to be found. So this was just at the point, it was so small. Surgery, there was going to be a distal pancreatectomy, which means they would have taken half of the pancreas and my spleen, because those things are connected. Mm-hmm. And by all stretches of the imagination, they told me that the pancreas that was left over was going to take over the insulin production. And I wouldn't be a diabetic. I would be fully cured and just had to get through this hard road for, 6 months surgery, recovery, and then 6 months of chemo. So they started the chemo 6 months after the full surgery.
Right. So you thought, I'm getting a surgery, not much is going to change other than I'm not going to have cancer anymore. And
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So when did they tell you that's not what happened? Is it like right when you woke up, or how does that go?
So my surgery was scheduled for March 28th of 2022. And on the 25th of March, I had my last CT scan before going into surgery, and I never saw the results of that. And while I was being wheeled into surgery from the little holding room, after I'd been laying there crying my eyes out, scared as scared could be, I met the surgeon for the first time face to face, because this was still times where they were doing phone appointments, and I hadn't seen his face even. Wow. So there he stood with me and told me that the tumor had grown in that 6-week time frame from one CT scan to the next, from 1.4 millimeters to 4.5 centimeters, and it had taken over the entire pancreas.
I'm not good with the metric system, but that sounds like a significant increase.
Significant is right. So it went from one tiny little dot in there to taking over the whole pancreas. And at that point, he said there still hadn't been any spread, but the likelihood that I was going to lose the entire pancreas was pretty probable.
Yeah, for people like me who don't know the metric system, that's about a 40 times growth of the mass.
Yes.
Yeah, it grew by like 40 times its size in 6 weeks.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
so aggressive. When they're saying invasive and aggressive, that it is. So the importance of the early detection was astronomically important. I can't even say, because at this point, the surgery the whole pancreas could still come out. the cancer hadn't still spread at that point. So there was a silver lining to that, although I was completely unprepared for what I was going to find when I woke up. So
yeah. It's like the opposite of Christmas. You got 2 gifts instead of 1. And usually they were like, hey, guess what? You have cancer and diabetes.
Yes.
You're like, I didn't have either of these things 5 minutes ago. What the hell? And so you're coming out of a surgery as a type 1, basically. Yep. It's type 3, right? Is that what they call it? Type 3C?
Type 3C.
Type 3C.
Yep.
You're come out of surgery as a type 3C, and somebody telling you, hey, there's way more cancer in there than we thought. And that's all out of nowhere and so for all the crying you did before, how does it, you do a little more after, I imagine?
So the surgery was 9 hours when it was supposed to be like 3.5. So that alone was a huge undertaking. And when I got to the recovery room, it was very late. And that's when they told me that I had lost my whole pancreas. And I also awoke to nurses in sheer panic because they were unable to control my blood sugar. So they kept me in the recovery room because they got me on, at this point, insulin drip, which has to be done with 1-to-1 care. And they're worried about DKA at this point. And I don't even know what DKA is.
Sure. Yeah. You're not even awake, but you definitely don't know what it is, right? Also, I take your point about the time. I remember we dropped my mom at about 8 or 9 in the morning at the hospital during COVID. We couldn't even go with my like 70 at that point, 78-year-old mother, I think 78 or 79. We basically wheeled her through the front door, gave her a good running push and was like, good luck. And then had to leave, cause they wouldn't even let you come in with her. And that was frightening in and of itself. But the doctor said, I'll call, like my number was the one he was going to call after the surgery was over. And I'm not lying to you. It was like 7:30 at night when he finally called me. And he called to say, my assistant basically is still closing your mom up, but I'm done now. And I was like, wait, this was like, I just figured the schedule got messed up or they lost her. Like, seriously. Because you couldn't, because we really did just kind of run through the door with the wheelchair. And we're like, all right, mom, like, well, good
luck.
Yeah. And I was like, maybe she's just sitting in a hallway somewhere, But instead, it took the better part of the day to do what they ended up having to do for the same reason, because they got there and they were like, wow, there's more here than we expected. So, yeah.
My family was completely unprepared because they were waiting at the hospital. And at some point they had to go home. And I remember my husband saying, yeah, we got the phone call. We were almost home. And it was way late at night when the surgeon called and told him, but I still hadn't spoken or seen any of my family.
That sucks.
And listening to these nurses in panic about these things that I don't know about.
They're like, hey, we can't get our blood sugar under control. And you're like, well, that wasn't part of why I was here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know what numbers mean at this point. Right. So my sugars were at 25 and I don't know what.
Oh, I could tell you, but only after I go to a conversion chart on my website.
I have a conversion chart saved on my phone from the Juicebox podcast. But,
thank you. 20. Oh my God. 25. Wait, are you serious?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's a 450 blood sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For hours, hours and hours and hours. And once they got them finally back down, I think it was about 1:30 in the morning is finally when I left recovery and then went up to the ward. But I had asked to call my mom because I just wanted my mom. I just, as you do, I just needed her. And so I had the phone call with her. Completely out of it, totally confused and very angry.
Yeah, and angry for a Canadian. What does that even mean? Were you saying darn it?
Oh, I can get super angry.
I always tell people, you don't know about Canadians. So people always say there's not as much gun violence in Canada. I was like, but they love to stab each other. So don't go giving them too much credit.
And I also hear we're very sweary. So. Yeah.
Well, I know for sure in bars, you're very stabby. So,
because we can't get guns here, right?
Well, I assume that's why it's happening. Yes.
Yep.
So, wow, you reached for your mom. Like you skipped
Yeah.
right over. I don't mean this in a bad way. I honestly don't. But when you thought I need help, you didn't go to your husband. You went to your mother.
I went to my mom, and I always do, especially with the medical stuff, because she understands more. My husband's a little bit more of a stress case when it comes to all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that he had my daughter with him, and I kind of didn't want to get her involved at this point before I'd even figured things out. And I think you always just reach for my mom.
I just think that this highlights a mother's instinct on your part, because if I was in trouble, I would drag everybody into my horror immediately. I'd be like, can't believe you people left. It's like, I need everyone back here. I want a vigil. There should be candles, crying. I actually cry in shifts. So every time I look up, I see somebody sad.
I went total opposite. I went into like recluse mode. I didn't want to see anybody at all.
Yeah. Did you think you were going to die? When does that occur to you the first time?
The first time it occurred to me that I might die was when I first got the first report that I had pancreatic cancer, because I mean, the Google tells you no one comes out of it.
Yeah.
And so I tried really hard, and I did, probably to my dismay. Actually, in the end, I stayed off the Google, and I stayed off all of the Facebook groups for pancreatic cancer, because it was all nothing but doom and gloom. And I wanted to stay positive, because I knew mindset had something to do with it. And I felt that I was in good hands, and that I should trust the people that were dealing with me in my situation, and not the random strangers that have had a myriad of different experiences, some good, some terrible.
Right.
And I didn't know where I was going to fit into all of that.
I hear you.
So I didn't do a whole lot.
You don't want to jump into somebody else's story and put it on yourself when maybe you're not in the same position they're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially since so many of those stories are not good.
Right.
It was not a safe place when I was learning a whole new life at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. You make yourself crazy, I would imagine.
Totally.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're kind of locked down. You got your mom. Does your mom say anything valuable, or is it all just a lot of love?
It's just a lot of love, because at this point she didn't know what was going to be valuable to say, other than it was going to be okay, and that she would be there every step of the way, which she has been, holding my hand every step of the way along this whole journey. She's not left my side.
Yeah.
And has been an amazing support for all of us, my family included. So we couldn't have done any of this without her.
Did she get off the phone with you and latch up the dogs, take a big cut of whale blubber, and head right to you on her sled? Or did she stay where she was? That's how you guys get around, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So she was there early the next morning. So at 1 a.m, I ended up back in my room, which was nice. I had a private room, which doesn't happen very often here in Canada. They're usually a 4-bed ward room. And given the nature of what I was going through, I appreciated that time where I was just alone and not having other patients in the room. But she was there, and you almost had to kick her out to leave at the end of the day. So I spent 9 full days in the hospital recovering from the surgery. The next day after the surgery, they'd sent in the first endocrinologist that I was to meet. And I sent her out the door as fast as she came in, because I knew immediately she wasn't going to be a fit for me.
How come?
She came in so bubbly and squealing with her hair in a high ponytail. And she's talking to me like, life is good. We have insulin. And she was so trying to be this bubbly, positive person. And I'm like, I like the facts. I don't need no like fluffy stuff. Tell me where it is at. Like, tell me what I need to know, what I need to do.
You and Arden might get along really well, because I like that the most despicable part of her was her high ponytail.
I just couldn't deal with her. And she came in, she gave me a meter. She gave me and left the nurses a basic Lara pen. That's how that went down.
You know what I was really surprised by earlier in your story? You can't be the first person to go into surgery and come out without a pancreas. Why were the nurses so thrown off by it in post-op? Because obviously you're not a person using basal insulin when you went in. So you have no insulin at all. Like your body's like devoid of insulin. And so yep. I'm not a doctor, Lara. I just want to be clear. And if you took a person and handed them to me and said, hey, I just took this person's pancreas out, my brain would go, well, we have to get basal insulin going right now. I don't know why that's difficult. like, you know what I mean?
You know what? I don't either, but I do know that they don't do these surgeries very often. And I am one of the few that it does happen because normally these things are found too late for this to make a difference.
Yeah.
So,
they don't do the removal because it's over by before it starts.
That's right.
Yeah.
That part I get, but when you are in that one-to-one care recovery room, I mean, surely you've had diabetics through there before. You know how to deal with the one-to-one and the IV drip of insulin, but they were shocked and didn't know what to do.
So this endo that comes and sees you after the surgery, she wasn't meeting your energy. Let's just say that.
No.
Right? Yeah. Because your energy was, hey, I just found out I had way more cancer than I thought I did. And now I have diabetes on top of that. And she came in like Mr. Rogers and you were like, no, we're not doing this. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. I understand, by the way. So what ends up happening then? Like you got your Basaglar pen, but what else did you get out of that?
So they never actually, this is, I know you're going to find this shocking. And I've heard, because I've listened to the diagnosis stories on the Juicebox podcast. They would come in at night and give me a shot of Basaglar. They didn't explain to me what that was. And then with my meals, as I could eat, because there was a long period of time where I had just really any difficulty, because they removed part of my stomach as well. So this surgery comes with gallbladder, spleen removal, part of your stomach, and your pancreas. So they've reconnected it all.
Why the stomach? Was there cancer there?
There wasn't, but just how the digestive tract works. They have to,
make
when
your
they
stomach
remove...
smaller.
Yeah,
I see.
They make the stomach smaller.
Okay. The Basaglars Lantus. So that's so they were giving you slow acting at night, but not telling you what it was. They didn't say this is basal insulin or nothing. Well, in fairness, you did scare the lady away who might have told you that.
Well, she didn't. She came in and she wasn't even really prepared to give me any education or anything at that point. I think they thought maybe too early, but obviously they didn't know me because I need to be armed with the facts and I need to know what it is that I'm doing and how is this going to work? Like, you can't just come and shoot me up with something and then expect me to know what it is when this hasn't been a part of my life. And I actually, truth be told, only know one other type 1 diabetic in my life. So
yeah,
I didn't know.
Right. No, yeah, you have no idea. Did you say 9 days in the hospital after that?
Yep.
9 days. Okay. Hey, do you have any idea what you're doing diabetes related by the time you leave even?
One night, I'm going to tell you this because no one told me anything about diabetes. They would come in, they would give me, when I would eat, they would give me a shot of insulin with my meal. They would give me the Basaglar at night, but they didn't explain to me like how much or what would happen or whatever. And I remember one night not knowing anything, and I didn't feel well. And if you know me, I have to be near death to press that nurse call button because I just can't stand it. And it was in the middle of the night, and I thought, I'm going to annoy all these people. At this point, I was in a 4-bedroom, and I was sweating and shaking, and I felt like I was running out of time. I pressed the call button, and of course, I had a low blood sugar. I didn't know this was going to happen to me. They didn't tell me. They said, oh, you have low blood sugar. Drink this juice. Okay. But they didn't tell me this would keep happening either.
You just thought like, oh, they probably just got it wrong this one time. This will never happen again.
Yeah. They didn't tell me this was going to be a regular, almost daily occurrence for me.
It's so difficult to be prepared for the first time anything happens. And this is going to sound disconnected for a second, but I have a fairly healthy life overall. Like I'm a pretty robust person. We were cleaning the other day. My wife and I did the very adult thing of cleaning our house one Saturday and just, spent the entire day cleaning stuff. And I'm a boy. So she's downstairs doing what she's doing. I just take bleach and cut it with water, put it in a spray bottle and just like douse everything, wipe it down and like, hey, look, it's clean. And by the way, works great. But I was cleaning in a corner. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but there's a toilet in the corner and a corner in the corner. And so I sprayed down the toilet and I sprayed down the floor. And then I walked away and came back. And I was in a room, obviously, with a fan that was drawing the air up from the ground. And I turned back around to kind of go down onto my knees into the space to, wipe everything up and do everything I was going to do. And I think between the ceiling fan running and how much I had sprayed, I just bent down and took in a bunch of bleach in through like a breath. And I felt it hit the back of my throat and then started going down my like, I don't know how air works, but it was going down through my chest. And as it was going down, like I couldn't breathe. And I've never been in that situation before. And so I'm wearing rubber gloves. I'm holding stuff. I have earphones in my ears. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, ooh. And I'm like, okay, I need to get, like, I feel like I should drink something. It's the only thought I have. I stand up immediately, snot running out of my nose. My eyes are watering crazy. I'm coughing and I'm thinking, oh God, if I'm coughing, at least I'm breathing. And I'm coughing. And I'm trying to pull the gloves off because I don't have a cup. And I know I'm about to like just take water, like Tom Hanks in one of those movies, and like throw it at my face and try to get some in my mouth. What was that one when he was on the island Castaway? And I'm like, and I'm going to like do that. Right. But I have the wherewithal to think I have bleach on my gloves. I have to take the gloves off. But as I'm reaching for the gloves, I'm like, oh, I'm going to die. Like I am going to fucking die cleaning the goddamn toilet. That is literally what went through my head. I was like, son of a bitch. I'm quasi famous. This is going to get around. And like, so I'm like, I'm pulling on these gloves, trying to get them off. I'm trying to get the water running. And as I reach for the water, I think, water or milk? I forget. Is water bad? Is water going to make it worse? And then I just had the thought, I was like, whatever, I got to clear it. Like, so I just started like shoveling water at my face. I got one good breath and I was like, need help. So I start heading through the house to get to Kelly. And I'm like going down the stairs. I'm like, like hacking up. Like it felt like a lung was coming out, but we've been married forever. So she fucking ignores me all the time. So like I'm coming down the stairs and I'm like, Kel, help. She goes, what's going on? And I'm like, all I want to say is, you son of a bitch. Like, what's going on? I'm dying. Look at me. Like, right. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm like running through the kitchen, trying to get a glass so I can force down as much liquid as I can in between breaths and having that real panicked feeling like my brain's going to shut off because I don't have enough oxygen. And I finally get it in and I'm standing there just dripping out of every hole on my face and like just dying. And she's like, what's going on? And I was like, you were no help whatsoever. And I'm like, so,
oh God.
I was like, I was counting on you and you just stared at me. But my point in telling the story, besides Lara, let's be honest, it's funny. But besides telling it for that story, I was thrust into a situation I'd never been in before around my health, and I barely held myself together. And I think I was I was in real trouble. And then she got put into a situation she had never been in before, and she kind of like just froze. And so I'm picturing you a couple of days shy of learning that, all this just happened with my pancreas and all this other stuff. You get a low blood sugar. You must have been me standing at the sink. You must have been like, I don't know what is happening or what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, it never happened to me before in my life. And I wasn't expecting it. Didn't know it was a thing for me. And I didn't know how to deal with it, but drink this juice.
Yeah.
Everything will be fine.
Well, let me just say this. If more of you would click on the links for the advertisers, I could probably afford to hire a cleaner to come through once a month and do a deep clean on the bathroom.
I will share it all.
Yeah, I mean, you guys could probably save my life by supporting the advertisers better. I'm not a person who pays to have things done around my house. Like even my neighbors, like somebody's cutting their lawn. I'm like, can you just cut your own lawn? And she's like, I'm 60. And I'm like, just get out there and do it. You'll be fine. I'm kidding. But I mean, if the podcast got big enough, I would get somebody to clean the bathroom. Just so you all know, you could save my life by supporting the sponsors.
It's an important thing.
Well, for me, Lara, because I obviously don't know enough to like dilute the bleach better before I use it.
Oh boy.
I basically
all these lessons we learned.
Yeah, I basically atomized bleach and then like sucked it up. So anyway, I'm an idiot. But anyway, okay. And by the way, what am I complaining to you? You have fucking cancer. So
Yep.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the truly horrific part of your story yet. Okay, so you're low blood sugar, they get you back up. Does that make you think not even like this could happen again? You're not even at that yet. Yeah.
Because I didn't know. Like I honestly hadn't a clue because really at this point, nothing had been explained to me. They just kept coming in, giving me insulin, feeding me, which was a difficult thing for me to do. They're giving me insulin for meals that I don't know that I can eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Geez.
So, and then even checking blood sugars, they would come in, poke my finger, but not really explaining. They would say this is good or whatever. I mean, I honestly didn't know. I had a meter they gave me, but they didn't come with enough lancets or strips to do anything with. Just one of the sample ones.
Yeah. Sample meter, 10 strips in it, right?
Yeah, done. So I was just really relying upon the care that they were giving me. And I figured by the time I was going to go home, I would have been to a class of some sort. I don't know. How does this even work?
Apparently not well. Good job, Canada.
And I fired my oncologist or my endocrinologist. So they had to find a new one for me, which they did, thank God. It wasn't until they were getting ready to send me home after this 9 days in there. And I said, but I don't know, like, what do I do? They still hadn't explained that to me. So the endocrinologist came in and said, give yourself 35 units of Basaglar at night, 4 units of Admelog for breakfast and lunch, and 6 units of Admelog at dinner.
Mm. Did they tell you to count, like, would they put you on a sliding scale or tell you to have a certain amount of carbs or anything like that?
Just eat like a diabetic plate.
Oh.
So my dad's a type 2 diabetic. So my mom's like, okay, well, you need to have like a little bit of carbs, lots of vegetables, and some protein. So outside of that, I didn't know how to eat anything else. Mm. I didn't know that I could give myself more insulin if I had a snack. I didn't know any of that until I found your podcast. No one taught me that.
That's something. I wonder if people in the medical profession hear that and are just ashamed.
Well, they should be, because it is such a huge thing, and it is something that can, as you know, kill you in a second, or send you into DKA if you're not careful with taking enough insulin at the right time. Brutal.
I'm assuming you're struggling along with this because these meals were probably not properly covered by insulin at all. I mean, who even knows if that was the right amount of basal for you, right?
Who knows?
Because 35, may I ask how much you weigh?
I was much heavier at the time.
Okay.
But as you well know, cancer and all of this surgery and all, the massive weight loss very quickly then put me into a point where I was experiencing multiple lows through the night because I was having too much at that point. So I think at the end I was down to 21 units of Basaglar.
I was going to say, yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you have any situation where somebody who you kind of knew saw you one day and was like, oh my God, Lara, Ozempic? And you were like, no, cancer.
Pretty much. Yeah. I kept it all very quiet. Actually, I didn't tell anybody what was going on until I started chemo. Actually, I didn't let anyone in. I was in such a terrible state of mind. I didn't let any other than my very close circle. No one knew what I was going through.
Can you give me a little bit of color on why that was? Like, why did it seem important to you to keep it to yourself at first?
It seems silly now, but I felt like I was going to be judged for maybe having a bad lifestyle, or I don't know. I think it was just also shocking for me too. Like even just saying the words out loud put me into a place where I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And it's made it all more realistic. And I wasn't prepared to answer people's questions because, well, I really didn't know what was going on at that point for myself. And trying to explain it all, I just wasn't ready for it all. And in the end, when I did tell everyone, the support and the outreach was astronomical. And I probably should have done it sooner.
Yeah, your worry was you just imagined, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
So when I left the hospital with my 1 Basaglar pen and had to stop at the diabetes educator on the way home from the hospital, where she gave me a sample of the Freestyle Libre, a little schooling on how to inject, where to inject. And then I stopped at the pharmacy for my Admelog pens, which I didn't have, needles, digestive enzymes, which is another something I have to take every day with everything I put in my mouth.
Yeah. Which ones do you use?
I use BioCase.
Okay. I use pure encapsulations, but I don't need it every time. But I obviously don't have the same issue you do. I might not even have an issue. I don't even know. I just know it helps.
That's all that's important.
Yeah. Honestly, like I had a slice of pizza yesterday and I put the pizza on the plate and then I thought, where are those little pills? And I popped 2 in my mouth. I went with 2 because cheese and grease and boom. I swear to you, I don't know that I ate pizza. Like any bloating or no bloating, no gas, no unpleasant trip to the bathroom, hours or days later, nothing like that. And it's all just from this little tiny freaking like thing. It's amazing. So, but you need it because they took your pancreas, which is a huge part in digestion.
Yes. And with pancreatic enzymes, there is either it's a fine balance, too little or too much have the same effect. And trying to find that happy medium sometimes is just impossible.
What's the effect?
You get serous diarrhea.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. Too much or too little, same situation.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is fun. Really, really fun.
Yeah. Make you long for those oily stools.
Right? I'll take that.
Isn't it weird where you draw your lines?
Gross. My life is full of grossness, let me tell you.
That's what happens when you bring the inside outside.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so you've alluded to this a couple of times, but you really I haven't let you dig into it because I'm trying to be modest. But the podcast helped you with your diabetes care, like in totality.
100%.
Like this is it. This is where you learned about it. Okay.
100%. I took what they told me at the diabetes educator, I threw it out the window. I've only actually had one appointment with my endocrinologist since this all went down. I managed myself and learned to be bold and brave with the insulin so that I wasn't getting the huge spikes that I had. But it was the episode where Jen, her name is Jen, she had a total pancreatectomy as well. She was actually my gateway in the Google search for finding like people like me.
Wow.
And that's how I found it and haven't stopped listening since.
Let me tell you, I mentioned earlier that there's something I have to tell you, right? Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I mean, I have a fairly robust Facebook group, and I forget, I posted something yesterday, and a lot of times people use my threads just to find me, which is smart because tagging me at this point it's difficult. I have trouble seeing all my tags. She just asks out of nowhere, have you ever had somebody on with T3C? And I thought I definitely have. Like I thought of Jen right away, but then what I thought was, and I'm about to sit down with somebody who I think has it, because this was like literally like 2 hours ago that I saw this post, and I thought, and I had looked at I did brush my eyes over my calendar this morning, like as I was getting ready to sit down to do this. And so I'm like sitting here answering messages and at the same time setting up the file for you. And I open up my calendar to like put your name in the file, and I saw it. And then what struck me was it said, what's your connection to diabetes? And it said other. And I was like, other, what does that mean? And I scrolled and then I saw, I'm a pancreatic cancer survivor. And then I saw all your notes and I was like, huh. And so then I finished responding to the person online and I said, and ironically, I'm interviewing someone today, like who has it, like, you know, who has this situation. And that's incredibly odd because people do not ask me about it with any frequency.
Timing is everything.
Really insane, I thought. So, yeah. So, okay. So you found Jen's, which is, hers is just called type 3C, right? Let me see if I can find
I think it says Jen has no pancreas.
Oh, yeah. I do name things like a 4-year-old. Hold on a second. It's not my fault. I was not well educated. I was not well educated. I don't have a lot of big words at my disposal. Let's see. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. I'll tell people what episode it is. Okay, what do we got here? Pre-owned pancreas, owner of a useless pancreas, 2 artificial pancreas studies. You too can build an artificial pancreas. Kelly's bionic pancreas. Wait, was that not it? Was pancreas not in the word? In the title?
I thought it was.
Hold on. Jen had a pancreatectomy.
That's it.
Episode 279. There it is, if you want to hear that. Oh, that was years ago. Oh my God, I've been doing this forever. How about that? 2019. Okay. Well, then it was about time we had somebody else on to share their story. So that's really, it's great of you to do. You mentioned before we started recording today that this is out of your wheelhouse, like being on the podcast, but you just wanted to help other people.
I do. I have an innate desire to help people. It's just who I am. And I think that with this platform and the things that I've gone through, there is a lot of help or support or hope or whatever can be offered. And for people that are going through this, that is everything.
Yeah. So once the surgery's done and you kind of, you find the podcast and you figure out how to take care of your blood sugars and everything, what's the length of time it's been from, well, I guess first from the surgery? How long? It's March 2021 was the surgery. Is that right?
It was March 2022.
2022, excuse me. Okay. So that's a year and more than a half ago for the surgery. And you did the 6 months of chemo.
I did.
At the end of chemo, you rang the bell. They told you were clean, the whole thing?
The whole 9 yards. Yep. Totally clean. Scans were clean. There was no sign of cancer. And because I didn't do my research and I stayed off the Google, I didn't realize that this is something that recurs even. Like they told me my margins were clear. Everything was good. They took 32 lymph nodes as well. They were all clear. So after the 6 months of really strong chemo, which also that chemo, I will tell you, is infused in sugar water over 46 hours, which is good for diabetic.
You had to bolus for chemo?
Bolus chemo. And they said, try and keep your sugars at 10. Okay, well, 16 to 22 was the average over those 3 days of chemo.
Hey, did you get the bone pain after chemo?
Yes.
Yeah. Did anything help it?
I take like a Tylenol 3. Mostly it bothers me at nighttime. It gives me restless legs and the bone pain in my legs is pretty bad. So Tylenol codeine helps with that.
Did they give you anything for the restless leg besides the codeine?
No. And I've had restless legs for years off and on, but it just gets exacerbated like crazy on chemo nights. Chemo nights are impossible to sleep just from the jiggly legs and the pain.
There's a medicine that helped my mom with the legs. I'll ask my brothers and see if I can get you an answer.
Cool.
Oh, shit. Lara, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So you did the chemo and it was really aggressive and you're clean margins, but you didn't know that it has a likelihood of coming back. They didn't tell you? They
didn't tell me this. There was zero discussion of reoccurrence.
Yeah. They told my mom, like, this is an aggressive cancer you have, but it's here in your ovaries and we're going to take all that out. Like my mom got a whole hysterectomy, right? So we're going to take all that out and you're clean and blah, blah, blah. And, but then nobody really said anything about like, but it could come back. And it was crazy because ovarian cancer eventually takes my mom, but she didn't have ovaries anymore. So if you're a layperson, you think that doesn't make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how could I have finger cancer if my fingers are gone? But turns out you can. Right. So are they tracking you? Did you get markers or symptoms? How did you know that there was a recurrence?
So in July, I had my first scheduled follow-up. So the plan for me was to do scans and blood work every 6 months for 3 years, and then yearly after that for 2 years. So July was my first 6-month follow-up. And because of our beautiful free medical system here in Canada, my CT scan that should have occurred in July actually wasn't scheduled until the end of September. But I went for the blood work, and they were tracking my CA19-9 tumor marker. Yeah. And when I got that result, because we can check those lab results on yourself, I was sitting at home that day I had this test done, and my tumor marker came back at 1,823, and normal is under 27.
Then they gave you a scan. They couldn't find any masses, but they tell you we're going to track the marker and we're going to go back to chemo. Is that about the plan?
So they put in a request to get the scan done in a stat manner. And I ended up having to pay for a private PET scan because I couldn't get one done in a timely manner here. And I was going to have to drive 4 hours to get it. And I don't know if you know this, that with a PET scan, you have to be off all insulin for 6 hours before a PET scan.
Oh.
And when you are insulin dependent, that's a feat in itself. It has to be below 10. Your sugars have to be below 10.
But without insulin.
Without insulin.
So do you just starve yourself?
Yes, pretty much. So I did it, but I thought driving 4 hours to do that, I wasn't going to do it. So we paid to have a private PET scan done, which showed spread. So I have no pancreas, but the pancreatic cancer cells were showing on my liver, kidneys, and lymph nodes. But there was 3 masses that they could see on my liver.
So they could see masses already. How long ago was this?
This was in July.
4 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're not nearly the only Canadian I know who can't get in for simple testing.
It's terrible.
So there's an argument to be made like, healthcare is really expensive in America. But at the very least, if you're waving cash around, somebody will see you.
Yes.
I have insurance. There's someone to bill. Oh, we can get you in. But in Canada, I think I know this to be true. From people's personal experiences, they basically, it's whoever's going to die first is at the top of the list. So
that's right.
Right. So you could have a problem that isn't, imminent, and you could end up waiting a year or more to get treatment for it. And that's not uncommon from what I understand.
It's not uncommon at all.
Yeah. Some provinces are apparently better than others. Where I guess, again, I should say province, but you don't know. You sound like that, right? It's just that you have no idea. And so it's okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you get put in that. So they would have killed you if you didn't pay for the PET scan.
That's right.
And you ran the risk of your sled dogs being picked up on the scan by mistake. So because you had to go. Yeah, right. I understand what's going on up there. Don't you worry. And the abominable snowman and all the stuff you guys have.
Yep.
So, oh my God. So let's really think about that for a second. If you would have waited on their schedule, all these masses are growing the entire time.
That's right.
Oh, there's no way you would have lived. Yeah.
When I finally got in for my provincially paid for CT scan, it took 17 days for it to be read by a radiologist.
Oh, that's not bad. Just 17?
Just 17.
What the fuck?
Shows cancer, but 17 days before it was read by a radiologist.
No kidding.
I already knew that I had cancer because the PET scan told me this, and the blood work showed me this. But then the oncologist wouldn't go by my private PET scan, and they were waiting for the CT scan result.
Really? They wouldn't look at the scan you had done.
No, we had to hand deliver the images and the reports to them for them to put in the file, but they were waiting for the CT scan. We had to drive an hour to this facility, get a CD-ROM disc or whatever.
I remember the 80s. Go ahead. Yeah.
Old school. Hand deliver it to the BC Cancer Center.
Someone just had me fax something for an insurance thing. And I said, am I sending it to 87? Like, what are we doing? I can't just send you a PDF. And they're like, no. It's like, why? Like, does anyone ever stop and wonder why? Like there's...
I ask these questions all the time.
And by the way, at least, a handful of years ago, Trudeau was at least handsome. Now he's a little chubby. So you're not even getting anything out of that anymore. You know?
Nope.
Canada. I'm shaking my hand to Canada. And you got all that snow.
Oh, I am. Yeah, I'm shaking my head every day too. Like, what the actual?
So, Lara, I'm sorry. So this doesn't sound positive. So, I mean, obviously chemo and I guess you're getting infusions to shrink, swell. Yep. Yeah, right?
I am. So I've opted for a few things, and I do have some positivity to talk about because I am doing very, very well. So I have started on gemcitabine Abraxane combination chemo, which is different from the first chemo. They told me that the first time the cancer cells have already seen this drug or these drugs. It was a 4-dose combination. And they're still here. So I opted to try something different, which is not the first line treatment. It's the second line. So it is working well for me. My recent scans show that there is delineation, there is shrinkage, there is no evidence in the kidneys any longer.
Oh, wow.
The liver masses, the 3 of them, they are shrinking and delineated. So I'm also, along with what I'm doing, the chemo, I'm doing high-dose vitamin C infusions and hyperthermia treatments, along with a million supplements through a naturopath.
Are you doing cold plunge or are you just walking outside?
I'm actually, the hyperthermia is not cold plunging, although I have considered it. I haven't done it yet. I'm a little bit of a chicken.
Lara, you have cancer. I don't think there's anything left to be afraid of.
True.
Yeah.
The hyperthermia is where they heat the tumor. So cancer can't live anything over 40 degrees.
Oh, so, you said hyper, not hypo. I'm sorry.
Hyper.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. So, hyperthermia. So it's targeted treatment. So I lay in this waterbed type thing, and then they have a panel that goes over top of you, and it sends heat up and down. So it heats the tumors, which then help the die off. So you do that the day after you do chemo, and then the day after that. So 2 days in a row, along with high-dose vitamin C infusions by IV.
And this is being provided by Canada, or you're...
No,
I was going to say, you're paying for this yourself, right?
Yeah, it's $655 for one treatment.
Jesus.
So
hey, I did cry
expensive.
In case you're wondering. When you said the tumors were shrinking, it made me cry. You got me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've been told that 1/3 of pancreatic cancer patients don't respond to treatment. 1/3 respond moderately. 1/3 respond well. And I am in the third of that third that are responding exceptionally well.
Oh, good for you. That's lovely. And I have
So I'm determined.
Well, and maybe I have an answer for you. My brother sent me the answer. So ropinirole, but it's commonly known as Requip. And it's a Parkinson's and restless leg drug. So
perfect.
REQUIP.
Okay, I'm going to look into that. I'll ask about that because it's brutal.
We tried a number of different things to help my mom. My mom was like, was doing some like drugs at the, for the restless leg and the bone pain at one point. And we just kept pushing and Requip was one of the things that actually helped her.
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah, I hope
I like to hear that.
Meanwhile, you're going to have to call a doctor and they'll return your call in 17 days. And then you'll mention that you heard it on a podcast. They'll say, I'm sorry, we have to do our own testing. And then they'll give you an appointment for 9 years from now. And your leg should stop shaking about the time that you die of natural causes in your 90s. So that'll be perfect. Yeah.
Oh, you got this Canadian medical system down pat.
But it's free.
I know, right?
You know why it's free?
Because it sucks.
It's not worth any money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should live here because people still bring up Canada. They're like, oh, it's free in Canada. I'm like, have you ever spoken to a Canadian?
Oh, the Americans, especially with pancreatic cancer, are so far ahead of the game and standards of care. It's unbelievable the things that can happen down there in these big medical centers. If I was rich, man, I would be down there and I'd be getting a nano knife surgery and you name it. I would get it all.
I mean, there's no doubt in varying degrees of everything that the luck of the draw of where you're born and how much money is in somebody's pocket is a lot to do with the kind of care you get. And you can whine and complain all you want that it's unfair, but that's how the world works, and it's what it is. So that really is something.
Advocate. That's all you can do.
Yeah, you got to keep arguing. That's for sure. I have found recently, Jenny and I are doing a series that is aimed at doctors. I keep being upset by the word advocate because I know the intention of it doesn't exactly match the reality of it. Like people are like, you have to advocate for yourself, which means which should mean what? Like, you're asking for things you should just have anyway, and that they should give you. So you're telling me like I have to talk you into doing your job more completely? Like that's like I need to understand what I need medically or else it won't happen.
Yep.
And then, by the way, when I bring it up, you're going to yell at me and tell me not to look at the internet. How the hell do you want me to understand this? Like you're telling me you either know and won't do it or don't know. Either way, I'm not comforted by that answer. And so I have to come to you and push you to do more. But I need information about what that means. So I go to the internet. So I turn to you and I go, hey, look, I read online. You go, oh, read online. You're like, wait, what? Like, so you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's upsetting. Seriously, the word just keeps pissing me off because I don't think it shouldn't exist. You know what I mean?
You shouldn't have to. Right. I actually have two oncologists, one that I started with and one that I was referred back to. And apparently he's very brilliant, but trying to have a conversation with him, like I'm very real. I like to ask questions. Unless he's read it in a textbook or it comes out of a textbook, he can't have an off-the-cuff conversation about anything. So I have found a second oncologist who's teaming up with him. That's my real talk guy. And I can ask him stuff. He's the one who gives me the positivity and the good notes and the high fives, whereas the other one basically looks at me and says, well, we can't cure you. We're just prolonging your life. And this is how it's going to be. And this other guy is like, we're going to get you into some clinical trials. And I've talked to this other specialist. So the help is there. Unfortunately, you really do have to look for it yourself.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that advice and experience clearly translates back to managing diabetes. And, like if people are like, oh, God, he's talking about cancer. It's a diabetes podcast. What are we doing? It's all very specific to just helping yourself.
Yeah.
If you take what someone tells you, you are very frequently not going to end up well. Like,
nope.
I don't know if you've heard me talk about this on the podcast, and I am going to try to get through this real quickly. My mom only got the surgery to remove her cancer because my neighbor's son grew up to be a surgeon. And he went to medical school with a girl who eventually ended up in OB oncology. And so I could ask my neighbor if it was cool if I texted his son. When I texted his son, I said, is there any chance you know somebody that could be helpful with this? Because the oncologist my mom has seen will not help her. Like, he was talking about like just hospice and, blah, blah. My mom got 2 more years. And instead, he was just going to manage her into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Over the idea that he said, I'm not going to kill your mom in surgery, which my neighbor's son told me translates to, hey, his hospital keeps score. And if someone dies in his surgery, his score goes down. And I was like, are you serious?
Because that's the important stuff.
Right. And so I'm like, okay. So he's like, don't worry. I know a girl from med school. So he calls his girl. That girl's like, oh, yeah, I work for this guy. He's amazing. And 2 days later, my mom and I are sitting in an appointment and the guy is scheduling her surgery.
Amazing.
If my neighbor's kid grows up and does something different, my mom dies 2 years earlier. That is not an over-exaggeration.
And that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Is that how this is all supposed to work? Like, right? I'm lucky because I don't know. That's ridiculous. By the way, the guy on the other side's kid is an engineer. So I guess good thing I bought on this side of the street. Like you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How is it that random? It's ridiculous.
Oh, geez.
Like you guys are right now like, Scott, one of your neighbor's kids is an engineer. The other one's a surgeon. And your son's got a quantitative econ degree. Where the hell do you live? I'm in a castle. Okay.
A castle. Yes.
The freaking point is, what the hell?
Yeah. I have fought my way through everything. I have fought for myself. And even when it comes down to diabetic technology, like they made me wait a year before I could get the Omnipod. I asked to switch to the Dexcom. Like those are all things that I took control over myself and forced the issue because they would have just let me keep going at status quo. And I know there's better.
Yeah. Listen, people die. Okay. And some people don't have great care. And that's a fact of life. But what you need to understand is that the people you're talking to, they try very hard to see you as a person. But honestly, you're a drop in a stream.
Yep.
And when you look at a stream, you don't see droplets of water. You see water rushing by. And so if you want to be treated like a special drop, you need to take care of yourself because everyone else is just at work doing their best. You know what I mean? Like, I listen, if you have a really nice car and you take it in for new tires and it gets scratched later, they didn't see your really nice car and think like, oh my God, it's a Mercedes. I should try harder. They got 50 cars they got to change tires on today. That's that. And this, whether you want to hear it or not, medicine's exactly the same way. It's just life.
Totally
and it's not that they're bad people. They're not bad people. They're fantastic people. They went to college for 10 goddamn years so they could figure out how to get inside you and take out your pancreas without killing you. I mean, that's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, God bless them and thank you. But the system, the process is where if you're not on top of it, then somebody else is. Like, so
that's right.
You know, I grew up around here, so I'm more accustomed to kill or be killed lifestyle because that's just, I mean, for you guys that live in the South and everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go to lunch and 2 hours later I'll do it. Like you know, that doesn't happen here. Like you're out there trying to get ahead constantly. You know what I mean? Like you're not just climbing a ladder. You're also kicking with your foot as you're going up, making sure nobody's following you. And that is not a good way to live. This wasn't my point. But when you have that inside of you, it helps with this other stuff. Like if you've ever listened to the podcast and been like, how did Scott get that for his daughter? Or I would never accept anything less. That's how.
And that's the thing. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to accept anything less.
You just need to know what to do. And often people don't have the knowledge of like where to go next or who to speak to, or like, you know, even if you have all this piss and vinegar, like where do I point it exactly?
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. Just, I can't say that it's just so true. It just really is. You know, I just happen to be a person who I won't accept that. And I will reset the hill I'll die on every day. So like, you don't want to like get into a thing with me. I won't give up, you know, but I have people in my family. My mom was like, well, they said they can't do anything. And I was like, no, Mom. I'm like, that's for other people. We're going to work this out, you know? Yep. And so
that's me too.
Yeah. Good for you. It's why you're here.
Yep. I'm already defying the odds with this time frame. So I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. Good for you. And when does your daughter graduate? Did you say?
She graduates this year. So her grad will be in June of this year.
Can I ask a hard question?
Yes.
She's young. So obviously you and your husband have had private conversations, but when do you bring your child into it and say, look, mommy's fighting, we're doing all these things, this is what's going right, but we should have a conversation about the things I haven't said to you yet that you might need to know, especially a person like you who knows the value of talking to their mother even in their mid-40s. So have you done that, or are you thinking about it?
Yeah, that's the hard one for me because, and this is where I'll cry. Those conversations do happen, and we're pretty real about things around here. And there's a few things that I'm working on for her so that she has some things from me after I'm not here, should something terrible happen to me in an untimely manner while I'm not ready. But we do have the real talk about those things.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that brings forward a lot of emotion. And for a 17, well, she'll be 17 this month, it's really hard to regulate those emotions around those things. So we're trying to learn to be patient and graceful with each other, and giving each other grace and space and time. But there's definitely some work still to be done in that regards with her and the family. But at this point, I'm focusing on doing well. It consumes me.
Of course,
Yeah.
right? I mean, because what do you start thinking about? Something you want to say to her on her wedding day, or if she has a baby,
Yes.
or like that kind of stuff, right? Yeah,
Exactly that. And I saw in one of the feeds on Facebook, it was a going away to college, like, photo album with notes and gift cards and that kind of thing for specific days along the way. And I was kind of working on that, where one page would have like a photograph and then a little note from me, and go get a manicure or buy someone a coffee or something like that. So I'm focusing on those kinds of things, and then preparing for the eventuality should I not be there. At first, I wasn't sure I was going to be here for her graduation, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be a-okay, given how things are going.
well, that's amazing.
But beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw these two girls on TikTok, maybe, and they're not that old. They felt to me like between 19 and like 22, like that age. They're sisters, right? And I guess they lost their mom to cancer, and they get together once in a while and tell their mom into a TikTok video all the things that you're thinking it's going to be something sweet. They tell their mom all the things they've screwed up or didn't tell her when she was alive or something. It's pretty hilarious. And
I love that.
Yeah, they like unburden themselves to their mother through TikTok. Their mother is passed. And at one point, one of the girls just starts cackling, laughing, and she goes, "I drove my car for a year without insurance. I didn't know you needed it." Like, and she's just like laughing, and and she's like, "Here." And I think they get on there like, "Mom, here's all the things we've done since you're gone that I know you'd be disappointed by," and they just start rattling all the stuff. It's very funny.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, it's very funny actually, and it made me feel good for them because they were really like together. They were laughing heartily, like they were remembering their mom in a really lovely way. And at the same time, I think there was some like childlike, "Hey, I screwed a couple things up and I need to tell somebody." Like it was really interesting. So, but again, we're not going to think about that for you.
No.
But it would be, I mean, I don't know how I call myself good at this and don't ask you that question. So I appreciate you answering it.
No,
seriously.
Yeah, no, it's the real talk about this stuff. I mean, there's so many different layers and so many things to think about and plans to make, both good and bad. But I think in actuality, everybody needs to be prepared for that, because life changes in a second.
Yeah. And you know what else too? Like, I could get all granola here and say something and it'll sound like bullshit, but it's actually true. Having the idea, like, we all live with the idea generally that we're going to live forever, right? Like we all feel like, oh, we'll live into our 80s. And, by the time I go, I'll be peeing on myself and I won't care anymore. Or I say stupid stuff like, I can't wait to like pinch nurses in a nursing home because nobody will say anything. like I want to get to that age,
Yeah.
But the truth is that there would be value in knowing your expiration date. Because, it's hard to think about, but, even for me, like, my son's not married. If I was going to get hit by a car tomorrow, I'd spend the rest of the day writing things down to my children and my wife and letting them know what I want them to know. But I don't know that. So instead, if I get whacked tomorrow by a car, or if, hey, let's be more realistic, Lara, what if I try to clean the fucking toilet and almost kill myself? Okay. And so what if I have a terrible toilet cleaning accident and I'm dead? And I'd never, by the way, do you think my kids would care about my advice if that's how I die? Probably not, right? They'd be like, what are we listening to this guy for? He killed himself with a spray bottle. anyway, I would have the wherewithal to do some of the things that you're thinking about. And, it's not a thing you want to think about happening, but if it's going to happen, then isn't it a blessing of sorts to know and be able to prepare, and not a blessing for, well, you know what? I was going to say not a blessing for you, but maybe, because you get to live through those emotions as hard as they are. But then, 5-10 years from now, your daughter gets to have your thoughts with her, and so I don't know.
And
there's an
that's the
argument to be
important
made.
part of it all.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made. Like what you're trying to do is you're trying to complete your contract as a parent, even if you're not going to be able to stay for the entire employment, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, of course it is. It's easy to say, of course, for me, as I do not currently have cancer. But for you, I just think as the person talking to you and listening to you, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, you have such a good attitude. Can I ask that my last question is, how are you maintaining this good attitude?
Well,
are you on the Canadian weed? Is that what's going on?
No, I think if you asked me before, I was quite a very pessimistic person, but I quickly learned that this is not a time for pessimism, because I'm just simply not ready. And I know that I subscribe now to the thoughts that what you put out there, you be specific about, you keep your attitude positive, even when it's not. Some days I fake it and some days I don't, but I have an immense support system. I have so much support from family and friends that has helped a great deal. And I think honestly, I've had to take a mind switch and change. I had to.
Yeah.
Otherwise I wasn't going to be getting out of bed every day, and I wasn't going to be putting in the effort to get dressed. And it was in those early stages, I realized that I was going to go downhill very, very quickly if I didn't turn that around. Right. So it's something I work at every day, and I try to keep myself out of the news and surround myself with positive stories.
Yeah, I bet you cancer really makes you stop caring about global warming pretty quick, huh?
Pretty quick.
Yeah. You're like, who are they going to vote in? And you're like, don't care.
Don't care. What's going on in the world? I really don't know. I can just focus on myself.
Yeah, my situation just changed. I don't care what you do. That's fine. Oh, you discovered a new plant, did you? Don't care.
Yeah.
Well,
that's me.
I know you came on to help other people, but I'm going to end by thanking you for doing something kind for me, which you don't know that you did. To know that I did something that helped you, it felt very good for me. And
you really did.
Well, and you're nice to say that. And I'm not unaware of the reach and the impact of the podcast, but for some reason, not for some reason, for pretty obvious reasons, that knowledge coupled with you also struggling with cancer and what has recently, transpired with my mom, because there's part of me that thinks I didn't help my mom enough. And I know that's not trust me, like intellectually, I understand that's not true. But emotionally, it feels like I could have made a couple better decisions along the way, or zigged when we zagged or something like that. Or, I was listening to this thing the other day. I learned about this supplement that helps with your blood pressure. And my mom couldn't take her infusions after chemo because her blood pressure was too high. And I thought, I wonder if this supplement would have brought her blood pressure down, and then she could have kept taking the infusions that were going to keep away the ovarian cancer, and would she have lived longer? And that's a really unreasonable thing to think. So I don't consciously think it. I want to be clear. I'm not sitting around beating myself up about that.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it hurts. And when you said what you said, you emotionally made me feel better. I thought this lady has this struggle, and I made this thing, and it made it better for her. It didn't fix it, but it made it better. And anyway, so you made me feel good. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad. I really enjoy the podcast. I shared it with others. I don't know. I think there's value in it for a lot of people.
Yep. I also defy other people to make a 90-minute podcast about pancreatic cancer where you laugh and curse as much as we did. I thought we had a good time.
We did. We did.
I really did. I did enjoy it. Well, thank you so much for doing this. If you hold on for just 1 second, I'd like to talk to you after we're done recording.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks. Thanks so much to Lara for coming on the show and sharing her story with us. A huge thanks to Dexcom for supporting the podcast and for sponsoring this episode. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Go get yourself a Dexcom G7 right now using my link. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.